Vengeance of the Moon Knight, issue number 4. That's right, folks. It kind of feels obvious in hindsight what we were doing in this book. If you really think about it, it's kind of obvious. If we just thought that a character would dress the same as always. This is the issue that reveals the new Moon Knight. Who is the person impersonating the Moon Knight? We find out in this issue. This big beat-em-up issue. I'm having fun. You know, I think there's been some change in just kind of like the direction that we've gone since starting up again with Vengeance of the Moon Knight. This definitely feels like it could be just a continuation of the other McKay book, but maybe there was good reason to start up again because we're kind of like changing the way this book feels and the tone of it. Just slightly. Like, it does carry over a lot, but the changes it does make, it definitely feels more like a personal story about Mark Spector's presence as a person as opposed to being about, like, Mark Spector himself. So sure, let's change it up a bit. All of these issues so far are focused on one of the characters talking to Dr. Sternum. This time around, we're with Yaya. He is kind of the one that's more reluctant to kind of, like, talk about stuff. He's always been the guy that's not, like, open about his feelings, but he's going to do his best to talk about this stuff. Now, he believes he has figured out who or what could be connected to this new Moon Knight. So when he's explaining it to Sternum, he's like, one of the voices in my head has recognized the fighting pattern. You know, when I first met Mark fought like he was an animal. He was always just like a caged up beast, just like ready to break. This new one has a style. There's a system to it. They've been trained. They're in a fighting style that one of the voices in me, one of the Fists of Khonshu, was talked about a little less than 200 years ago. So as Badir is in the therapist room, we cut with him and Tigra going on a mission. So it's intercutting between the two of them. They realize that the headquarters that this new Moon Knight is operating out of is the Mount, which is the place where Mark Spector died in an explosion. So they have to go back to the place where it all ended, or where it all began, however you want to say it. And that's when Badir tells us about, like, the death cultists of the mid-1800s. They were going against the Cult of Khonshu, and they came into conflict with the Cult of Kali. And we see, like, a depiction of, like, one of the 1800s Moon Knight who's on, like, a moon horse. The horse is branded Moon Knight, so it's like a moon horse. That's pretty sick. This Moon Knight with their, like, rapier starts fighting a character, like, clouded in black. So, like, the Cult of Kali they're, like, the opposites, I guess, is what we're going for. Maybe they have, like, their avatars or something that are just, like, Moon Knights, but they're like this now. Black cloaked Moon Knight characters, that's the villain. Makes sense to me. That's old cowboy stuff. If you got a black hat, you're a bad guy. If you got a white hat, you're a good guy. Makes sense to me. So Greer and Badir head back into the Mount. They're like, okay, let's try to keep ourselves intact here. This is obviously like a play to make our emotions rise back up. So if we keep our cool, keep calm, I think we'll be okay. We intercut that with Badir back in his therapist's office, and Sternum is like, you know, you are a very intellectual person, and I feel like there's more at stake here than what you're saying. So I want to just, like, ask if this is truly about Mark Spector, your brother, as you call him, or if there's more at stake here. I realized that the moment we started asking about your feelings and your personality, you revert back to calling me Dr. Sternum and not Andrea. So what's up with that? Is this about Mark or is it something else? They realized on their mission in the Mount that there's a couple of things here that are like motion sensors that are wireless that they're probably going to trigger if they can't do this properly. That's like not their specialty to, one, attack in the daylight, and two, get through security like that. Not really their thing. But if they make themselves known and their presence loud, perhaps that is going to be the thing that helps them. As Mark always said, I like it when they see me coming. Greer's like, let's make ourselves known to this presence. As that's going on, Sternum talks about how this may be more about the place of a Fist of Khonshu as opposed to Mark himself. You are somebody who values what the Khonshu is. And that is when Badir kind of lashes out. He's like, yeah, of course I do. The Fist of Khonshu means everything to me. It's the greatest honor of my life. And the more I am the Fist of Khonshu, the more I creep into the madness myself. I'm aware that I'm going to die, and if I come back from that death, I'm going to lose parts of myself. I saw how that affected my brother, and how Mark lost himself numerous times, and I was mad at him. I was mad at him throughout an entire span of the arc for a bit, but he earned his wings, essentially. He earned the right to be a Fist of Khonshu, even if it broke him or he was already broken before that. But this guy, this person who shows up in his clothes, pretends that they are him, this imposter, this dilettante, I hate what they are doing to a Fist of Khonshu. What that means. I do not like a thief wearing my brother's clothes who hasn't earned the right to wear my brother's clothes. Which I really like this idea for Badir. That seems so in character to him. I like Mark enough. But I like the Fist of Khonshu, and I like this priesthood I essentially have upon myself, and I hate when imposters show up to try to take control of that. It's steeped in like religious undertones, and that's like a really cool aspect to show. I really dig that. We then cut to the new Moon Knight. He is like sleeping on a bare mattress. He like wakes up to alarms going off. He's like, "Oh shit, it's an attack. Okay, I guess we're gonna fight now." And that is when Badir and Tigra show up to attack him, and it just becomes a little bit of a fight. We intercut that with more stuff being said from Badir in the therapist room, where he's just like, "I'm sorry, I just lashed out there for a minute. That's not what I like to do." She's like, "It's fine. And you should know, like, it's human to be afraid of these things, not to confront them." He's like, "No, I'm a Fist of Khonshu. This is what I have to do." And now I understand that there's something else at play here, something else going on that I am not aware of, and that kind of scares me. So if I die, I will not be resurrected, and I know for a fact now that there's going to be worse things to take the place of what I am and what took the place of my brother. So I'm terrified of dying. I can accept myself losing to the madness and becoming more destructive in that, but now I know if Khonshu is truly locked up somewhere doing whatever, and this is what replaces our Moon Knight and our Hunter's Moon, then I'm afraid to die. And that's pretty cool. Cut back to the fight they had earlier, where we see the new Moon Knight kind of doing worse now. Because we see that Hunter's Moon has figured out the fight pattern. Like, he trained it with the Cult of Khonshu, so he's like able to anticipate the movements. It throws us Moon Knight off. He doesn't like that. And they're able to figure that out. But he's like, all right, I left that cult a long time ago. So you're like, oh, he was connected to the cult. Okay. So the Cult of Khonshu, what character? Is there like an ancient character that this could potentially be that we're talking about? Maybe. And then we see what Greer was thinking this whole time. And she's like, every time we've encountered each other, you've tried to like knock out my nose and knock out my senses. And I started to wonder about that. So you kept using the pepper. I started to anticipate that there was something you wanted to hide from me, and maybe you were just trying to hurt me. That's also very plausible. But on the same level, there was something else you were doing, wasn't there? I figured out what it is. I figured out what your scent is. And that is when Hunter's Moon is able to like jump Moon Knight because Greer has distracted him. They have him. They have him cornered. They have him set up. He's getting furious. They rip off the mask, and Greer's like, yeah, I recognize your scent. Isn't that right, Max? Or as I should call you, the Shroud. And we see, underneath the mask of this new Moon Knight, is the Shroud. Very, very interesting. He's still got like the weird spider tattoo thing on his head. And, wow, okay. In hindsight, it's kind of funny to me how the new Moon Knight is just a guy that's dressed like Moon Knight all the time, but how none of us expected that to be the case because everyone was thinking something deeper. Now, this could be like a switcheroo where maybe this like isn't the actual guy that's Moon Knight. I think it is because we see him use like the purple power, the purple magic power stuff. So I think it's him. And this guy was already like created to be like a Batman the Shadow parody, so sure. having him become the Moon Knight, yeah, I'm not against that. I think there's going to be an interesting story reason for that. Not a name I was expecting, but I am pleasantly surprised by that. It does not upset me in the slightest that this is a character that we're going to like have become Moon Knight. You just Google the Shroud from Marvel. The character is dressed like Moon Knight, just in black. And this is just Moon Knight in black. So I'm not against this at all. There's probably good reason for it. I like it. I like the tension that everyone is just like, we have to control ourselves from the situation, even when we're like planning an assault. But Deer is just like, there's something going on, and I'm probably going to die. And that pisses me off that I'm going to die while this imposter gets to walk around and do stuff. I really dig that. Like, this is a good interpretation of all the characters. Like always, the artwork is great. It looks really fun. I dig it so much. What I do find annoying is that after this, we're going to be going straight into the Blood Hunt book. So we're kind of like going to cut away from like this reveal just to go into Blood Hunt, which sucks. Or is it the next issue that's Blood Hunt? I think it's yeah, whatever. Interesting reveal. I'm on board with it. I think it's kind of interesting. Curious to see where we're going to go next. I like that it maybe like brings some new information to the Shroud. Maybe like the Cult of Khonshu will become like a bigger presence as like an antithesis to the stuff with the Cult of Khonshu. That's kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting it to be the Shroud. I'm not against the reveal in the slightest. So, Vengeance of the Moon Knight, issue number 4. I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.